My name is Jelena Andjelic. I am consulting in the area of communication, employer branding, and employee engagement. And I'm happy to be here today with you and help actually lead the discussion with these three wonderful ladies. We will be talking a bit about the topic of engaging and attracting actually talent from abroad, or the expats. But before we jump into that, I just want to let you know who's sitting here today with us. We have Melanie Dower joining us from Supercell, coming from Helsinki. Originally, Melanie is from New Zealand, but she moved 4 or 5 years ago to Helsinki, and she herself has a substantial expat experience that she's using actually in Supercell to help colleagues relocate smoothly and start working in Supercell together and integrate into local environment together with their families. We also have Marta here today. Marta comes from Nordeus, and Marta Blanco. She's coming from Nordeus, and Marta is responsible for engagement and mobility in Nordeus. She's also an expat, moved from Dublin to Belgrade office a year ago, and she's extremely passionate about helping colleagues relocate smoothly and integrate into exciting Nordeus community in Belgrade. And our third wonderful lady today is Anna Novaković. Anna comes from the company Culture and Friends and Culture, sorry. It's a Belgrade-based company that started actually with certain food and culture tours for foreign guests in Belgrade. But on the way, Anna and her team discovered that there is actually more than they can offer to foreigners relocating to Belgrade. And they have put together a wonderful program that is being used to help expats integrate into local society and become actually comfortable living in Belgrade. And we will be talking a lot about that later on. There is actually this emerging trend in the gaming industry to attract talent from abroad. There's this best possible talent that we want to have, and many of them are not actually present in the location we are doing business in. So we need to attract them to relocate and join us in our location. And then if we talk about companies that are not based in the most attractive and, let's say, hot geographies, if you're not based in Silicon Valley, but in some other geography, you as a company have an additional challenge to actually attract the talent and explain where they will be coming to and motivate them to pick up, their stuff, take their families and really come to live in a different city. And I would like, first of all, to ask Marta and Melanie to share from their perspective from experiences of Supercell and Nordeus, two companies which are not based in hot geography, but actually in Belgrade and in Helsinki. What is actually that you're facing when we talk about attracting talent from abroad? Why do you need talent from abroad? And what are the main challenges that you have once you approach them and try to kind of motivate them to join the companies in these locations?
I can start. Okay. Yeah, as you mentioned, Nordeus is based in Belgrade, here in Serbia, proudly based in Belgrade. And one of the main challenges that we have when we are attracting talent is basically to let people know where is Serbia, where is Belgrade, what is the location. Mm-hmm. Most of the people, once we just reach them in the recruitment process, they don't have information about the destination. Mm-hmm. We have several situations among our employees when people say like Serbia, oh, but this is very cold. It's like, no, this is Siberia, it's not Serbia. Or maybe it's dangerous. It's like, no, this is Syria, it's not Serbia.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the main challenges that we have is the destination itself, that is not in the list of the top 10 countries to visit. And I think that other cities as maybe London, Paris, Barcelona, and Lisbon, they have a competitive advantage, like that everybody knows. And everybody knows what to expect. So I think that this is one of the challenges to attract talent. The second challenge that we have is stereotypes. Most of the countries, they have stereotypes. I'm original from Spain, and people think that Spain is everything about siesta and fiesta. It's not the case. We, in all the regions of Spain, we are original from Galicia, we don't dance flamenco, we don't eat paella, and there is not bullfighting. And I think that something similar happens here in Belgrade, that some of the stereotypes are connected to the recent history. Yeah. So it's something that the employee, the candidate, has to discover, when they are discovering Nordeus as well. So those are the main challenges attracting talent.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also have some common challenges. I guess people don't always know where Finland is, or they confuse it with Sweden, or think it's part of Russia. So first is clarifying, where is Helsinki? People say it's cold, it is really cold. So they're right there. We have really long, dark winters. So people know a little bit about Helsinki, and most of it is true, it is challenging. A really good thing about Helsinki is it's very safe, it's really good for families, and it's got a really good reputation for things like education and healthcare. But if you're a young person wanting to live in a city like London, it's a little, it's quite a quiet place. So I have to do a lot of expectation management. I want people to know that if you want to live in a city where you can walk to work and you can walk all year round and we're outside every single day no matter the weather, then it's perfect. But I just want to check that people won't come and you find it too quiet. So I guess we do a bit of expectation management, but I guess more and more people are looking for that. They don't want to drive an hour and a half to work anymore, so that's good. I guess one of the big challenges too, which we'll cover today, is for the families. So Helsinki is becoming more of an international city. At Supercell, we're about 60% Finnish, 40% expats. But it's difficult to find work in Finland still if you don't speak Finnish. And Finnish is a really hard language to learn. So it's often one of the challenges is for the spouses. And the big question is, what are they going to do?
Yeah. And if I understand it, Nordeus, you are more than 160 people, 22 different nationalities. Yeah. And then in Supercell, 30 plus nationalities. What are the most common, let's say, obstacles that people face once they relocate? What are they faced with? What happens to them?
I think that the main challenge is a language barrier. For most of the paperwork, we don't have information translated into English, so people don't understand Cyrillic. And I think that for basic stuff, our employees can't be independent. So I will say language is one of the main challenges once they are relocated here. Another one, it will be cultural differences. At the end, it's a different culture with a different society rules, manners, traditions. And if the people don't have the right context, they can get frustrated because they don't understand. They don't have the whys, why this is happening. So I will highlight those, that they are the main ones for Nordeus people.
Yeah. Is it similar with your experience as well, or something on top of that?
Yeah, Finnish culture is quite different for a lot of people. Finns are really wonderful people, but they're generally speaking, it's quite a country of introverts. And they joke about things like there's this noise when you come out of your apartment and your neighbor comes out at the same time, and then they quickly go in and shut the door. And they don't like being in elevators, the personal space. I mean, this is close friends. Yeah. you've probably seen the photos of Finns at a bus stop in winter, and they're all evenly spaced down the street. So, this is something to get used to. But Finns are also very loyal friends and really funny. But people come to the office and they're like, wow, it is so quiet here. But Finnish people also really value work-life balance. So all those things you hear about Helsinki is a place to live. I mean, our office is pretty empty by 5. People really value family time and their own time. So they kind of get shit done and then they leave. And that is a really positive thing, but it's quite different for people who are used to really open offices where everyone's chatty. So it's a good thing, but it's different for some.
Okay, Anna, can you help us address this, let's say, cultural shock that happens? They both mentioned that is something which happens to people, coming to new geography, new culture. What happens actually to them? Is it really a shock, or can you just, from your experience and expertise, give us an idea of what really happens to an individual?
So we like to use the definition of culture as a software of the mind. So you have been using the same software for 30, 40, 50 years, and now you're coming somewhere where everyone's using a different software. So it's totally different. And usually what our brain kind of does to us is making everything that is happening about ourselves. So I really like your example with the bus stop. Usually we would think, oh, people are distancing themselves from me because of me and what's happening, and that is kind of the stress that's accumulated. It can be smaller things that accumulate through time. And what's interesting is that when we have a similar software, this is a longer process. And then year in, 2 years in, we actually then see how many of these small differences were there. But if it's a big gap between cultures, it can happen instantly.
Yeah.
And what we believe is that when we have a cognitive component where we understand this is why people act this way, and you don't even have to react to that. You just understand why is that, then the emotions tend to go down. Like if you're under stress and you understand why you're stressed with this, that can immediately, within 24 hours, that's the beauty of that, but also long-term for you to understand what's going on.
Yeah. Ladies, you personally are kind of part of that, part of that experience. I think it would be nice, I know it, but let's share it with the audience. What happened to you once you relocated? I know that you actually moved, your husband was actually employed and you relocated with him. So I know that there was a special year for you, the first year in Helsinki, and it's interesting to hear those experiences, because I think that many, let's say, spouses that join employees have that type of experience. So if you can share some details with us.
Sure. We'd been living in Australia for 11 years, and we agreed we'd go home for 2 to New Zealand and then move overseas. And then he came to me and was like, what about Finland? And I was like, oh my God. It's the fastest way there. It's a 26-hour flight. It just wasn't on my radar. But it just made sense. It was a kind of team decision. He got a job at Supercell as a game artist, and it just was a no-brainer. So we moved, and my biggest fear was, what am I going to do? I'd been working in Australia with families who had somebody in prison, and I'd kind of carved out this quite niche role. It was my special area, and I ran community training and how to support people who were coming back to community after being incarcerated, and I just couldn't do that in Finland. I met with agencies who did that kind of work, and they said the issues are the same, but you need to speak Russian, Estonian, or Finnish. So I had to really think, okay, what am I going to do? And so it was actually, and I say this to candidates when they come out and their spouses, you have to see it as an opportunity. I mean, I definitely found it hard. It's not like I just landed on my feet, but eventually I realized this is an opportunity. What can I do? What do I really enjoy? And I thought, I really like writing, and I'm a native English speaker, which is no big deal at home. But in Finland, it was something I could put on my CV. It became part of my personal PR. And I started writing articles about Finland for magazines back home, because people were super interested in Finnish design and Finnish social welfare system and so on. So I kind of created this job for myself, and then eventually I met a local photographer and we made a book about Helsinki. And I never would have done that at home. I just wouldn't have had time. I never would have thought, like, oh, I could write a book. It just was crazy. So I try to say to people when they're considering coming to Helsinki, like, is there something that you have in the back of your mind if you can't do your current career here? I mean, the spouses. Is there something? They say, oh, yeah, I've got my master's thesis I have to finish. And I'm like, perfect. Like, have you heard of Finish Winter? Like, because you got 6 months of darkness coming. It's a perfect time to write a thesis. Or people are like, oh yeah, I've been working in the film industry and I want to write a screenplay. So I try and just really get people to think about what skills do you have that you might have overlooked? What things have you been hoping to do that you've never had time for before? And also what skills can you transfer? So working with the families of people who've moved to Supercell, and it's not a great comparison, but it's kind of like working with families of prisoners. Because I'm working with families who are going through change and who are experiencing loneliness. And I'm working with families who need sometimes just practical information. They just want to know how to do things and they'll do it themselves. But I'm also working with people who are going through emotional upheaval. They've maybe never moved before, so I eat a lot of lunches and like with people and check in on people emotionally and how they're doing. So if you can just see how you could maybe use your skills from a previous role for something new. So I try and encourage spouses to do that.
That's great. And what about you? With you, it's a bit different situation. You got the job in Belgrade and your family, your husband and family joined you. So what are your experiences?
Yeah, my experience is completely different because I've been working for Nordeus over the last 5 years, initially from Dublin. So I used to come here quite often, once a month or once every 2 months. So I was familiar with the culture, I was familiar with the location, with the company. I had already friends here, so for me it was not a big change. I think as well as Serbian and Spanish, we are quite close in many things. So I think that I was prepared for the change. I think that the real expat in our family, in our team, is my husband. That he was the one who gave up on his career, that he moved here with me, supporting me in that professional step. And completely swap roles because I just came back from maternity leave, so he was becoming a professional dad and I was going back to work. So he went like completely through different path that I went. In general, it happens that, you know, like in general, I think that the person, the employee, is fully protected in Nordeus. They are in the bubble of everything can happen, everybody understands you, you know, like everybody speaks English. Everything is very easy there. You don't need Serbian at all, you know, like, and if you just receive a notification from Telenor in Serbian, you just talk to Maya and say, like, can you translate it for me? Because, yeah, and it's that. My husband, he doesn't have the same experience. He needs, like, the language skills to book a taxi, to go to the bank, to do an international transfer. And I think that our path, like settling in the country, is completely different, yeah.
Okay. So, is it tougher for him?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, I would like us actually to do a little bit of a deep dive in what is it actually that you're doing with colleagues who you are first of all attracting and interviewing and then relocating and then settling and helping them to integrate into, let's say, company but also local society. I think that you have really good practices that you can share with the audience that can be useful. And I would like us to go a bit more into details. What happens? What is the, let's say, a process? And let's go wider, and then we will talk later about this cultural part in particular, where also Anna has a lot to share with us. But I think it's good to share your practice. It is really can be called a best practice in what you're doing with people when they need to relocate. So, Melanie, maybe you want to start first, or?
Sure. I guess one thing I try and do when we have candidates come out for interviews, we invite the spouse if they have one. So we try and include them from the beginning. You know, and I am asking, what do you currently do? What do you think you'd like to do? And I'm just really honest, you know, it could take you a year to find work in Finland. So you just try and kind of set some expectations, management. And then we have a really active spouse group at Facebook, so we're really lucky. We currently use Facebook. We have 120 members, are all spouses, mainly women, just because of the makeup of our company. But they're Finns and expats, so I think that's really important. Many just want to see what's happening, and they don't really participate, but there's quite a core active group who help each other out. So, for example, we had a Japanese guy come recently, and his wife is due to give birth this month. So they were moving, and she had a lot of questions about having a baby in Finland, and I haven't done that. So I could ask on the spouse group, hey, would someone be willing to talk to this woman? And I had 6 spouses say, sure, put her in touch with me. So that kind of support is really useful. Also, people can ask questions like, what's the Finnish word for asthma inhaler, and where do I buy one? You know, so the locals are really helping out. I think it helps the confidence of the expats who've been there a year or two, because then they start sharing their knowledge, and I think they feel really good about how far they've come. They start seeing each other socially, and so I guess kind of because of my social work background as well, I'm trying to constantly teach people so that they don't need me anymore. Unluckily, we keep hiring, or I'd be unemployed, but you know, I try and organise meetups. So I noticed, hey, we've got like 20 women at home with babies, so I might have a morning tea in the office, they bring their babies, and then they start to meet each other and make their own plans, and that's perfect. I can just kind of quietly back away. Or they start suggesting activities. So we'd like a singing group, so now they meet once a week with a singing teacher. Or one might say, who would like to go horse riding? And if they don't need me, I just stay out of it, and I just watch it unfold, and they start to plan to meet. Other times one might say, hey, I've just passed my yoga teaching and I'd love to teach a class for you all. And so then I can jump in and I'll book the gym and I can do the venue arrangement. But we do lots of fun activities, but I often say to other gaming companies too, like, we're super lucky at Supercell, we do have resources, but the best things we do are the really cheap ones, like just plugging a phone into the big screen and doing karaoke in the update space and eating pizza. Like, really the most fun we have are the things that are really cheap, and people seem to enjoy the most. And then we also we do quite a bit of work with some volunteer startup refugees in particular. So we have like Women's Day brunches for women from the reception centres, and we need people to come as hosts and just have a warm chat or be a friendly face, and so we invite the spouses, and some have been really good at coming or even doing data collection in the reception centres. So volunteering is another way that we try and give them something to do. Yeah.
Great stuff. And what about Nordeus?
Yeah, we have similar approach to Supercell. Like, we try to support like the employee from the candidate moment, and from the moment that they are coming here for the last stage of the interview, and all the journey until they just settling here in Belgrade. Initially, in the candidate, when they are candidates, still candidates, like, we try to present a bit the city and the culture. We organize like city tours with Friends and Culture, where they can discover a bit like about Serbia, the history and the gastronomy. And also, if the candidate wants, we organize some area visits for them to discover where they would like to live, and like to discover a bit the city. If they are coming with families, like maybe with them as well, like arrange like visit to international schools, so they can have a clear perception and view what to expect. This is like if the candidate just received the offer and they become an employee, our team, expat experience team, becomes the main point of contact for them. That means that we are connecting them with our partners just to arrange all the relocation of their belongings, as well like with an state agency that they are helping them to find the right house where to live based on their requirements. And also to kick off all the relocation paperwork, like a working permit, resident permit for the employee and for the family. What we like to do is like before the start day, we want to bring the employee here with the family as well, like for a visit. We realize that it's very helpful for them because they have different like views than when they are candidates. When they are candidates, they are just focused on getting the job. But when they are employees, they have a different perception of the city. They can focus more on the areas that they want to live, a bit more about the team itself and everything. And in that moment, what we do is like kick off all the visa application, and we just give them this booklet with everything that they can expect from our team. That like Serbian lessons, cultural onboarding, taking part on social activities, happy hours, party, discovering the city with cultural activities as a day in the National Museum and so on. And we as well realized, because of I mentioned before about the journey that the employee is going through and the spouse on the plus ones is different, we as well try to focus on the spouse because they don't have that network support as well, and try to set as well expectations and to see what they want to do here and support them in that decision. So we try to cover everything from the moment that they are candidates and the moment that they move to Belgrade. As well, similar to Melanie, we hold hands at the beginning very tight, but our main goal is for them to become independent. We think that is the only way for them to feel that they really belong to Belgrade when they start doing things by themselves. So we are there as a backup, but we reach the point of saying try by yourself and see how it goes. If you need us, just come back to us. But just try, just try. And at the beginning, we see that the relationship with our team is very tight, but little by little, it's kind of, you see them grow, that the city is growing on them, and it's great,
And you do, if my understanding is that you kind of in advance tell them what they will get in type of support. That's part of, let's say, attraction, am I right? So you make them aware what does it mean relocating to Belgrade, and so you use actually those information to kind of make them feel more comfortable to consider the job, am I right? So that's
exactly.
part of the sharing that information is part of the attraction, am I right?
Exactly.
It helps.
It helps a lot. I think that what we want is remove every concern or any worry that the employee may have, and for them to focus on discovering the city and focusing on the studio. That at the end is the main reason why they are moving here. So what we try is just to look after the rest of the things that they are a hassle, if you want to buy a car, how to use public transport, pet relocation, if you have a dog, how to move it here, we try to remove every single concern, make it easy for them to focus on the reason why they decide to move to Belgrade.
Okay, good. And I guess that's more difficult for the spouses. We did touch a bit that. It's kind of more complex for them. How much do you kind of in advance let them know this whole program, if I may call it so, that you support the spouses with? Is that also part of the attraction, or it's something that they kind of find out once they arrive?
No, absolutely. During the during the interview process, so I'd meet with both of them and go through that. It's usually, in my experience, the spouse who has the most questions, so it's also really important to CC them kind of from the beginning in all the planning, but they know ahead of time.
Yeah, the spouse is kind of important, their perception and what they are actually doing and spending their time. Their time also influences the ones working at the company. So it's kind of good to support them as well.
One of the main failures of international assignments is the family is not settled. Is not adjusting well in the country. So as I mentioned before, in Nordeus, in the office, in the studio, we have all the support that we want. They feel more alone, more lonely. They are the ones that they are facing day to day you know, like Serbian reality. So as well, like most of them, it's a moment of redefining their careers, to finding who they are again, what they want to do, what is the value that they want to bring to the community, and what is going to be defining their new purpose. What are they going to do here?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's important, very important for us. Like we know, like we have like buddy system in Nordeus. We know that the employees super like look after them, you know, like, but the spouses are the ones that they need extra support for sure.
Okay. Well, we talked a lot about spouses, and that is okay. Many people come not alone, but with somebody. But regardless if coming alone or with somebody, I think that this, let's say, cultural experience is something that needs special attention in order to kind of speed up this, this integrating and settling in process. And I believe that you've went a bit further in that, and together with Anna and her team, you have put together a cultural onboarding program, which turns out to help a lot for colleagues joining from abroad and their families. So I would like us actually to hear a bit from Anna. What exactly did you put together? What is the approach? How you're working with these people, and how you're supporting, and what are the results of that work?
So in collaboration with Nordeus, we came up with a scheme where we have 5 sessions, and they're individual with every person individually, because we truly believe that it's a unique journey for every person. And I love what Melanie mentioned, how people actually forge a new meaning. And that's one of our aims, to have all the people open up to Serbian culture. So we also get the benefit of them being in our country, because we have to realize that for 20, 30 years, no one was coming here. And it's a great privilege to have these people here, not just work-wise, but also in a private life. Of Belgrade and Serbia, and also to ease up the stress that is created through the cultural differences. So we do 5 sessions of 2 hours, and as I said, they're very individual, and for us it's also important to talk about history a bit, because it's a big factor in some of the dynamics that are present today in everyday life in Belgrade. So when people understand them a bit more, it's easier to navigate life and also conversations in Serbia and Belgrade. We are also using transactional analysis as a psychological approach, which sees big life changes as a great opportunities for growth. And that's what we believe is happening, and that's what we see when we work with people, that they are actually gaining a new, expanded identity with this experience, and it's beautiful to watch that unfold. We're also using the studies done in Netherlands. I'm always, if there's someone from Netherlands, I'm sorry for how I pronounce this, Hoofdstede Institute of Cultural Studies. And we use their tools to actually measure the inner culture that person carries with them, which doesn't have to even resonate with the culture they come from. So they might have been experiencing cultural clashes with their own culture, and now they're coming into new culture where they will clash on some other aspects of it. So that's very interesting, because that's how we kick off our first session, that we actually look at these personal results where people see and can anticipate what might be stressful in Serbian culture for them, and we go into depths of analyzing that.
I'm curious, what are the, let's say, most common shocks for them?
So, yeah, so there's this, there are 5 dimensions of culture, but the one that's most stressful and present is collectivism versus individualism. So Serbia is a typical collectivistic society, and the definition of that is that the one person is loyal to a group, so it is protected by a group. Okay, this has roots in our history and all the dynamics throughout centuries, but most of the people who are coming now are actually from individualistic societies where they are loyal to themselves and protected by the higher system and not by a group. So this is kind of in every aspect of life, from the smallest things. I will give you one example, which is where in Serbia people feel entitled to comment how you behave with your child on the street. And Marta is laughing because she experienced this. So they feel entitled because it's a child is like everyone's. It's a collectivistic society. We all take care of each other. And I'm going to comment
Your child is my child, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And it's from the best intentions, but it's very stressful if you come from a place where it's your child is yours and only your responsibility. So you can first realize this and then kind of lower the stress. But then you can decide how you're going to react to this. So.
Okay. And what is it that you get from these people once they go through the program? How does it work for them? Are they relieved, or does it get smoother afterwards to use that experience? I believe yes, but just
so it depends on person and on stress level. At the moment we start, and it's different things are very interesting to different people. So we keep the sessions very flexible. We have a lot of materials and a lot of theory, and so we can then dive deep with that, or we can just stay at the surface.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is that we talk about some things maybe when they're 1 month into their life here, but the light bulb might go off a year in. Yeah. So it's like we're having this new software coming in, and the understanding that they carry with them. So it might be that they didn't even have stress at the moment, but we were talking about it, but it's there for them to lean on whenever they want.
Yeah. Good. That's really good. And I think that there are some considerations that this type of approach is being reused. For example, I understand, Melanie, that you're considering or have already applied some kind of a pilot program similar to this.
Yep, totally stole this idea. I did. Excuse my squeaky voice. Yeah, when I came to visit and met the team and went through the cultural onboarding overview, I was just so impressed. And so we've just had a pilot in Finland. And what really surprised me, it's been good for those who've just arrived. And even, as I mentioned earlier, a Korean girl who's worked for us for 11 years and has a Finnish husband. And I thought she'd know everything there was to know. But she said it's been really different in a working environment. She's just moved teams from our player support team, which has like 25 nationalities. She's just moved over to admin, which is all Finns except for her. So it's been really, really good. And I think the most valuable thing is you're comparing your own culture, as you so nicely said, your stress points, and understanding the values and where they come from. You know, Finns are known for being direct, and they have this value that's very strong of sisu, which is doing stuff for yourself. And kind of we look at where that comes from historically, and then it's just so fascinating because when you first land in Finland, it can feel like people are a bit unhelpful and a bit unfriendly. But once you kind of see, like, well, there's this really strong value of doing things yourself, I started to think, perhaps they think I can do things myself. And it was really new, and I found it quite flattering. But at first, I found it really isolating. So it can really help with settlement to see those. And now we have offices in Asia as well. I think it's really interesting to look at communication styles and do you value more politeness, as perhaps they do in Asia, or honesty like they do in Finland? So it's been really helpful. So I'm really grateful to Nordeus and Friends and Culture because they've totally shared these ideas, and now we're going to start it.
Yeah, that's good. I'm happy that this is kind of broadening the approach. And I would like Marta actually to share with us. She has some additional plans with this approach. You saw some good, let's say, good usage of it in some other areas, not just related to relocation and accommodating expats to the local society, but something more than that. And I'll let you tell us what you're thinking of and planning to do.
We are already working with Anna on designing a program that it will be like multicultural training. After the success of the cultural onboarding, we had a lot of people, local people, interested on what's going on here. You know, like everybody feels like they have developed a feeling of belonging. They have more tools to understand what's happening. And we got feedback from some people in the company that they would like to know, like those manners, like social rules, like from other cultures that we have in Nordeus. So we are developing together with Friends and Culture that multicultural training that we think that it will bring like a lot of understanding of the diversity that we have in the company, and a lot of respect as well, like about different approaches, especially like about communication and how we give feedback, how we take feedback, what is the understanding in each culture of the personal space, and things that they are very basic, but I think that make our life together in the studio much easier.
Okay.
And I can give more technical details about the program because they are already working on that.
So it's interesting that maybe for us from Friends and Culture, the most interesting thing is when we see an aha moment when we're working with someone, when people say, I never thought of it that way. So that's what we want with this program as well, that people just open up to that people are seeing things from different perspectives. And that it's okay. So it's going to be a few hours workshop, so we cannot go more into depth, but we can open this door to thinking that way. Well, that's normal. I'm normal. Everyone's normal, just functioning differently, and not to higher the stress or like confrontation or something like that due to these beautiful differences, which we can actually use to develop ourselves and communicate even better.
That's great. We're looking forward to actually learn more in the future of, let's say, results of that work. I'm glad that you're kind of deep diving into that as well.
So, Anna, you mentioned transactional value.
Sorry, transactional analysis as a psychological, direction.
Transactional analysis in terms of creating pits into peaks for experiences and potential. Can you give some examples of that, some positive examples of that happening from the people that you have worked with?
So I would say where people came into our culture, where we have a lot of historical baggage recently, and they were kind of walking on eggshells around those topics, and then we kind of discussed those topics, and then they were able to engage in conversations and actually get closer to their colleagues and actually give value to people who were now sharing their stories with them. So that comes first to my mind, that it was a great conversation opener because now there was no fear around that topic.
Do you have some cases where you hired both partners? You know, a wife and husband and so on.
When I'd been in Finland about a year, Supercell had a couple of guys leave because their wives were not happy. I don't actually know the full details. I think one wanted to move home to be closer to her mother, so you just can't always compete with those kind of family ties. But that's when our CEO started to think, what are we doing about families? And my job was advertised, so I applied. And so I now work there, and my husband works at Supercell as well. We have a few couples, but everyone's there on their own merit. You know, I guess we don't tend to hire couples just to keep someone. It's very competitive, and we have a really long interview process. One goal at Supercell is to stay as small as possible. So hiring is taken really seriously. But yeah, we have a few couples there. But we're lucky that if people come from similar backgrounds in gaming, Helsinki is a real hub for gaming. There's a lot of smaller studios looking for people, so that's actually a bonus,
Yes, and don't you have a problem when one partner works at your company and the other is in competitor's company? Is it like...
Helsinki is a pretty friendly scene, I think, in gaming. Everyone looks after each other. It's a pretty small scene, and people are probably, if we hire someone from Rovio, they'll know most of the other guys in the company because they've probably all come from smaller startups along the way. So my perception is it's pretty friendly and supportive, actually. But I guess, there's always a usual information sharing and want to keep separate.
Great.
In Nordeus as well, we have like, I think that 8-9 couples. But the reason why we hire them is because they are the perfect fit for the role, not because of the fact that they are spouse or plus one. So yeah, we never have like any conflict.
Great, thank you very much once again.
Okay, so we've reached the end of this discussion. I would like to try to kind of summarize this as the way I see it, and you can also object to that. But I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing in your line of work. I know that it is a challenge to attract the talent, especially in the gaming industry, if you're not in the hot location. And to some, this might be like, so what? I'm offering a wonderful job in an exciting, cool company. We are developing software and games, and we are. Yeah. But on top of that, every individual needs some, let's say, life in the local environment, and this is the most scary part, especially for the ones who are going to, let's say, an unknown location, like the ones we discussed today. But not just that, not just unknown locations, any location. I think that providing this type of support to the employees and helping them kind of integrate into the company and all the support that you give them and to their family members is something which brings value and which really helps to them to, get started, integrate as quickly as possible and really be the members of that cool, great company that they started working for. So I hope that all this experience ladies shared today add some value to you guys as well, that you see and consider and use many of this. But on top of that, start thinking seriously about this as well if you haven't so far. Helping those people integrate and onboard as smoothly and with pleasure is something which really engages them in their everyday work and helps also their families enjoy that life in new environment. I am sure that ladies are available also to share further information and experience apart from this gathering. So feel free to contact them and ask the questions in case you have them in the future. And thanks a lot for joining us again.